Despite attempts by the People's Democratic Party to present a united front ahead of its presidential primary, Nigeria's main opposition party is caught between a rock and a hard place. On the one hand, a section of the People's Democratic Party is pushing for the party to adhere to the power rotation principle it introduced in 1999 by zoning its presidential ticket to the south ahead of the 2023 elections. Yet, powerful presidential hopefuls from the north, such as former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, Senator Bukola Saraki, and Governor Aminu Tambuwal of Sokoto State, are pushing for the party to open up the contest for its presidential tickets to all zones in the country. On Tuesday, Atiku met with the Board of Trustees of the People's Democratic Party and reminded the party that the 11.26 million votes it secured in the 2019 presidential election, when it was on the ballot, cannot be discountenanced. He was of the view that members of the PDP should work together again to surpass those votes in 2023. He cautioned the party to be mindful of the consequences of another election loss and remaining in opposition for another 8 years, adding that this could sound the death knell for the PDP. Now joining us to provide more insight into the outcome of the Board of Trustees and National Executive Committee meetings of the party is Debo Ologunagba, National Publicity Secretary of the PDP. He will also be telling us how the PDP intends to manage the competing interests, including the feuding governors battling for control of the party ahead of its presidential primary and 2023 elections. Good morning, Debo Ologunagba, and welcome to the Morning Show. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Dr. Abati.
Good morning. Well, quickly, the PDP has started selling expression of interest and nomination forms. But at the same time, the party has not yet resolved the matter of zoning, with interested candidates from the north saying that they should be on the ballot. They should be given a chance, and that an open field should be created. The most recent persons who have said this will include the party's flag bearer in 2019, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar. So is the nomination form, the expression of interest form, is it open to everybody from any part of the country, despite the fact that the party has not reconsidered its earlier position that there is an open playing field?
Good morning, Dr. Abati. Thank you very much for having me. First of all, we need to appreciate the basis for the PDP. We probably have to step back a little bit and go into the history of the party. The party was set up to be a melting point for all peoples of Nigeria. And to that extent, we recognize that there are conflicting interests and differences among the people of Nigeria. However, we have the common goal of being a political party that will be a melting point and a unity forum for every people of Nigeria, all peoples of Nigeria. And to that extent, for everything that we do, there are guidelines, there are rules that is in consonance with our Constitution and, of course, the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as amended. So today, go to your question. We believe, in line with the constitutional provisions of every Nigerian and right to aspire to any position, that everybody who is qualified or who is interested can go ahead and pick up the ticket of the party, to the extent in terms of the nomination form and the expression of interest. And that's what you see us that is playing out right now. However, to address the issue of zoning and the concerns that have been expressed in public forums all over the country, the party, consistent with its ability to reconcile its differences, and you see that play out during the National Convention. A party is composed of conflicting interests, whether cultural, religious, depending on this, the consideration of the individual members of the party. Sometimes tribal, sometimes regional. However, the PDP has a very robust resolution of its internal conferences, contradictions or differences. And you saw that play out during the National Convention. There are 21 positions that are available to be contested. Only 3 were contested. And how did we arrive at that? The different organs and interests and stakeholders of the party came together to resolve these differences and arrive at consensus for most of the positions. And you saw that we went to the convention, we went in like a carnival, like a family that we are. And that was exactly why you have that very successful and probably the best ever held national convention of any political party in Nigeria. Now, on the issue of zoning, because consistent with our policy and our culture, the party at the 95th NEC set up a 37-member committee to look at the issues of zoning, the desirability of that, the necessity of that, having regards to the constitution of the party, and then the tendencies in the country at the moment. And they have the mandate to look and review all these tendencies and in line with our constitution, and then revert back to NEC for a final decision to be taken on what we do about zoning.
Right, thank you, sir. So while waiting for that committee, the zoning committee, to revert, it does appear as if some northern candidates or northern aspirants might know something the rest of us do not know, because the news coming out of PDP is that a group has bought a form for the former vice president and your presidential candidate in the last general election in 2019, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. There's also the governor of Sokoto, Governor Tambuwal, expressing his interest. There's also former Senate president and former governor of Kwara State, Bukola Saraki. Is this all pointing to the fact that PDP's zoning committee will emerge with a candidate from the north? And what would be the basis of that decision?
Well, thank you very much, Fudu. I believe that it will be premature for me to assume or to begin to discuss what the committee is set up to actually do. We have recognized the need for us to have the kind of conversation within our party. And you can, from the constitution of the committee, you will ensure that we want to have an inclusive consideration of all issues. The 37-man committee or 37-member committee is going to be composed of one representation from each of the states and Abuja. That makes it more inclusive, and then would allow the conversation to take place among them, and then they come back with a recommendation. It will be premature to begin to assume or decide what might happen or might not happen from the committee. So I think what we should do, and what we always do as a party, is to give to our committees the free hand and the ability to make unencumbered consideration of the issues and then come back to the NEC. And NEC, in its wisdom, would take a decision, one, that is consistent with our constitution, two, that is in interest of the unity of our country, and then consider all the competing interests, particularly at this time, when this country needs so much unity, coming away from what the APC had done to this country in destabilizing our unity and destroying what we have, we know you to know as a people and the peoples of Nigeria. So I think it is wise, and I think it is instructive that we should wait for the recommendation, and then the NEC will take the recommendation, consider all the issues that have been raised in that report, and then move forward with regards to what we do and the decision we take regarding zoning.
Okay, I would like to ask, a lot of people are reacting to this 40 million naira to buy presidential nomination form in your party, and over 20 million naira to get governorship nomination form. What's the rationale behind this 40 million naira?
Well, that sounds like a lot of money. But today, that doesn't look like a lot of money, having regards to all the challenges we have in this country. However, we shouldn't lose point of this. I think it would be out of place not to look at the whole picture of what we have done. There are significant steps we have taken. As a party, we're conscious of the need to have youth in our system because once a political party, there must be what I call mentoring process in a political party for us to have a culture for the country. What is significant in what we did, and I think that should take more of the news, and that is the fact that we recognize the not too young to run. And in giving effect to that, as a party, we are very conscious of taking deliberate action to ensure that the young people of Nigeria can participate in the electoral process and indeed have a possibility of being mentored into the process of governance so that we can have a culture in this country. And we have said so much about that. We reduce the amount payable by young people between the ages of 25 and 30 by 50%. I think that is revolutionary in terms of political inclusion and participation of the young people. You will recall that women have free from PDP. Again, we are being sensitive to the needs of the women to have inclusiveness. For the position of governor, we didn't change that. It has always been 21 million. But we recognize that for the presidential, it is important to have figures that are manageable for that position. And we considered, after several and long debates, at the caucus level, at the beauty level, and at the neck level, we arrived at 35 million naira for expression of interest and for the form, and 5 billion naira for expression of interest for the president. So we think likely that is reasonable considering the position and the enormity of what we expect to do regarding those positions in terms of political issues and campaign issues that might be involved with that. So we think it is in the wisdom of the party and at neck level that those figures of 21 million and 40 million is reasonable in circumstance.
Okay, let's talk about Edo State. What steps have been taken by the party to resolve the crisis in Edo PDP? We've seen the verbal exchanges between the governor of Edo State and the governor of Rivers State, and Philip Shaibu's expression of dissatisfaction with the failure to integrate those persons who left the APC to join the PDP, ahead of the last gubernatorial election in the state. Particularly now that we're beginning to have reports of violence. Yesterday, a PDP chieftain, the secretary of Oredonai ward, who's been very active on social media, taking positions on PDP politics, was shot at a popular drinking joint off Sakomba. Is this an indication that we may be witnessing some violence in Edo PDP? And really, what is the party doing? Even NEC was postponed for about 24, 48 hours because of the crisis in Edo State.
Thank you, Dr. Abati. First of all, let me just make some clarification. Number one, the NEC wasn't postponed because of the crisis in Edo State. Clear. And I think that should be put on. So with their statements on the social media, you should discountenance that. It was not postponed for that purpose. And I'll go back to that a little bit. On Monday, when we had the caucus, which is to precede the NEC, the meeting was slated for 8 p.m. And of course, a lot of people traveled long distances to attend the caucus meeting. And we started the proceedings, and when it was getting to about 12 o'clock, people were getting tired, fatigue was setting in, and we thought it wise to move it forward so that people can have a little bit more rest and then resume on Wednesday. So that also happened on that. On the incident that you just reported in Edo, as a party, we condemn violence by any means. And I think that is regrettable, and this is not acceptable within the party. This is not who we are as a party. We are a peace-loving party. We do our things in order. according to our rules and guidelines and according to our constitution. And so we condemn that in all its entirety. With respect to what the party is doing, consistent with the position of the party that activates its internal crisis mechanism, the NEC, at the 95th meeting, again set up a 3-man committee, a resolution of the issues relating to Edo State, headed by the governor of Benue State, and then assisted by the governor of Delta State and governor of Bauchi State. So again, NEC is a NEC committee that will again need to report back to the NEC in the next few weeks. All actions have been taken to ensure that prior to setting up of this NEC committee, the party, because we create structures that help us to take care of all these challenges. We don't have challenges only in Edo, we have it all over the country. Only yesterday we had meetings with all the stakeholders in Kano State, and we brought them in, and we had the conversation. And because you recall that resolution is not a sprint, it's not a 100-meter dash, it's a marathon. And because it's a marathon, you need to keep engaging your people. This NWC, when it came in, we set up a committee comprised of the National Working Committee, the Board of Trustees, the Governors' Forums, and the leadership of the National Assembly to ensure that all issues are brought before us to discuss. Now, those were the committee that were able to resolve some of the challenges we had in Ekiti and Osun. And so, gradually, as a party that has structures, that have values, that have systems, that have rules, we're putting all this together. And so, we can tell you that we are okay, and right now we believe that what we have done in Edo State will douse the tension there, and I'm sure, consistent with the tradition of PDP, you'll see us resolve our issues in a couple of weeks, if not days.
Right, thank you, sir. I wanted to go back to the issue of women, which you mentioned briefly vis-a-vis nomination forms. Women did get that freebie, and they had to pay for the expression of interest forms. But what is PDP doing about the issue of inclusion? You have women's groups occupying the National Assembly and being ignored, which is shameful. But inclusion does not necessarily have to come by an act of the National Assembly. That will come because we are agitating for that. But what is your party doing internally? Because right now, it's only 5 women who are in the running for positions in your NWC, and 2 of them have to go to women, women's leader and deputy women's leader. So it's actually quite a dismal number. Tell us what commitment PDP is making to this important issue.
Thank you very much for raising the women issue. I get back to what you said about the protest at the National Assembly. And I will recall that at the NEC, that was specifically mentioned, and it was supported by the caucus of the National Assembly, that by virtue of the pressure that the PDP caucus in the National Assembly has placed on the National Assembly leadership, 3 of the 5 bills that were rejected the National Assembly has rescinded its position, which is, I believe that's a good development for women empowerment and inclusion. Secondly, as a party, to ensure that we expand the cause for women, that's why the party deliberately brought a policy that allows women to have free form. And that is fundamental. That is actually a revolution in terms of allowing women to participate in the electoral process. So as a party, we have a conscious policy to encourage women. At the National Convention, the good thing is that every woman that is qualified and intends to be an aspirant is encouraged. There is no policy that bars women from here, and we, as a party, believe in the power of women, knowing fully well the strength in the electoral process, the voting rights of women. More than 50% of the voting population in this country. So we are conscious as a party, and we're gradually and surely improving our processes and our policies to encourage women to participate. And the forum started yesterday, and I was encouraged that we got almost 8 women showing interest in the House of Representatives, particularly young women, because 1, they have 50% reduction, and 2, they have free form. So that gives them the opportunity to, if they are less than 30 years, between 25 and 30, they can take 50% off for any position. I think that is commendable for our party, and I think Nigerians should begin to see PDP as a party that's, one, is interested in inclusion, two, that is willing and ready to rescue and rebuild our country. Right now, women take the brunt of all the crisis in the economy. Right now, no kerosene, no cooking oil, nothing. From a government that came in under the idea and lies about changing our life, but what they brought chaos. So we are conscious of women, and the party is constantly improving its processes and its policy to encourage women and to ensure that they participate in the electoral process.
Right. So a lot of people are still been raising concerns about this your 40 million presidential form and the money you are collecting. And these are their arguments. Some are saying that you are saying 40 million for presidential nomination form in a country where NDIC says over 90% of Nigerians don't have up to 500,000 naira in their bank accounts. Over 90% of Nigerians don't have up to 500,000 naira in their bank accounts. And you're saying 40 million naira nomination form is no big deal. Secondly, I'd like to ask you, what is happening in Osun State? Who is the gubernatorial candidate of the PDP? Who? Adeleke? Or the other person that won in the parallel party primaries?
Thank you, Rufai. I think I'll start with Osun State. Again, a political party is based on rules and processes and a constitution. And it's been established in plethora of cases on the Supreme Court that it is the national headquarters of a party that conducts primaries and congresses. In the case of Osun State, 6 candidates indicated interest as aspirants. They collected forms, and we made provision for every one of them to contest on a free and fair platform. We set up a committee headed by the Deputy Governor of Bayelsa State. That tells you the level of the composition of that committee. Consistent with our rules and with our constitution, the NWC mandated the committee to conduct a primary in Osun State. And it was conducted free, fair, and credible from the report we got at the NWC, corroborated by reports from other agencies, the INEC, the police, the SSS. Haven't done that, haven't followed our constitution and our guidelines and our rules with respect to conducting primaries. And I'm happy that you use the word parallel. When it's a parallel, of course you know what that means. What we have done is to receive report from our committee, appeal processes was set up, we didn't receive any appeal, the report was considered and approved. And so, today, by the processes of the PDP, Senator Adeleke is the candidate of the party. And I think that should be clear. The fact that there's another group of people that went to another area does not rise it to a level where you can begin to say it's equal or in the same standing with the one that the NWC set up. So today we have a candidate, the names have been submitted, and we're ready for the election in July of 2022.
Okay, let me ask you about new persons who may be moving into the party. Can they buy the form without a waiver? And what are the requirements for a waiver? And if they do not indicate interest or buy the nomination forms without a waiver, if they eventually get the waiver, would they still be allowed to buy the forms? Because there are maybe new persons who want to join the party.
Well, I will announce to the whole world that PDP haven't reorganized itself is a darling of Nigerian politicians and for all Nigerian people today. So people are welcome to the party anytime. Consistent with that, because we know that the position of waiver has always been there, the requirement for waiver has been reduced from the usual 12 months to 30 days. So waiver can be given in appropriate cases. And when people join us, having regards to the fact that we're available for people to join, because we know we've been calling on Nigerians to join in the train to rescue and rebuild our country. We expect that there are men and women of goodwill in other associations in this country, whether political or apolitical, that will be interested to participate in that mission. So for us, if you apply and you join us, you go through the processes, but we will obey and ensure that our rules are adhered to, because we are a party of law and order and of rule and of system. So when people join us, going through and if they satisfy our conditions for waiver, they will be granted and they will be allowed to participate in our process.
Thank you, sir. Now, to go back to a reference Dr. Abati made earlier about the statement credited to Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, talking about how PDP is in quite a precarious position now. 8 years out of office is opposition, but 16 years out of office is some kind of political Siberia. So exactly what is the roadmap that PDP is going to undertake to try and ensure that that fate does not befall your party? What are the ideological arguments you're going to be advancing? How are you going to argue against the performance of the APC for the past 8 years at the center, for example?
Thank you very much. I think this is very, very important. And I thank you for this question and the opportunity to say that. Again, I mean, we need to look at the trajectory of the APC. One, the PDP is an organic party. It was a party formed based on principles, on values, and on the basis of that, it has processes, it has systems, it has affairs. So it's an organic party that was based on principle and philosophy. There are mantra for it. Unlike the APC, I have severally referred to them as a special purpose vehicle, which we call SPV. What we have done was that they set this thing up as a contraption to defraud Nigerians. And they came with the slogan, change. But I now change it to chaos. Because if we look at our life in the last 6 years, the question that every Nigerian should be asking, am I better 6 years ago than I am right now? And the issues are very clear. Let's take the economy. Now, the PDP handed the APC a $550 billion economy. Today, we're in crisis. We handed over a 7.3 unemployment rate. Today, we are on 33%, and it's counting. We don't even know what it is today, because every day there's a dynamic number changing. We handed over an exchange rate of 197 naira. Today, we are on 700,000 naira per dollar, and it's counting. We don't even know. We handed over, at that point, in 2015, an economy that was the first destination for foreign investors. And today, we know where we are. It is so sad that today, Nigeria, I just came in this morning and I saw a lot of people that actually virtually slept at gas stations, taking petrol from a country that is the top producer of petrol in Africa and in the world. I mean, it saddens me as a person. I think the people of Nigeria are sad. It's unfortunate that we fell for the lies. And what do we get? We got chaos. Again, you look at unemployment, 33% and counting. How do you survive that? Young people getting out of school have no jobs. So for us, what we are doing, and more importantly, the unity of this country is completely in shambles. You remember this president came up with the policy of this government where he talks about 97% and 5%. This man came in, this party came in to divide Nigeria. We have never been this united as a country. So the policy of the PDP is to bring us together. And when people have hope in a system, they have a hope in a system and it's a nation, they are encouraged to assist that country to survive. Right now, there's anxiety in every part, agitation there, agitation here, because of the policies of this APC government, because it is not a party. Now, you look at it from this angle. A party that cannot conduct a simple statutory national convention. I mean, if you can't handle your own affairs, how can you be expected to handle the affairs of a nation as complex as Nigeria?
Okay.
Because the APC is peopled by several warlords, political warlords, I call them, in every part of the country, taking itself. Today, we have 2 illegal chairmen who are governors, who by the constitution are barred from holding any other executive position whatsoever by virtue of section 183 of the constitution.
Okay.
But this is a party that violates rules and violates our constitution. So
okay.
Nigerians can choose, and they know that better right now.
Okay.
So much we need to say. All we need to do is to bring our people together, create and lead the charge towards rescuing and rebuilding our country. And I'm sure we're sure on the right path. People are coming up. Nigerians can see that PDP is organized. If we can come up with its own national convention, organize a gathering, created an environment for us to live together as a people, and that's what we're doing. It's unfortunate that we find ourselves in this. Hope is on the horizon. Nigeria should not despair any further. Thank you very much.
A lot of people will argue that the PDP has its own internal problems too. That's not only the APC, and it's not right for you to say it's only the APC, because take, for instance, the case in Osun that you say is settled. The other part has gone to court, parading their own candidates as the candidates of the PDP in the Osun gubernatorial elections. So, and there's also the case of Kwankwaso, for instance, in Kano. That has left the PDP and has gone to set up his own, political movement, now morphed into a party, NNDP and the likes. So that's another challenge. I'm sure you would like to talk about Kwankwaso because that's a heavy loss, for your party. But I asked a question earlier on, and I'll ask it again. In a country where 99.4%, now being corrected, of its citizens have less than 500,000 naira in their bank accounts, according to NDIC, National Deposit Insurance Corporation, and you're selling presidential nomination forms for 40 million. Make sense of it for me.
Thank you, Rufai. Again, let me start from the internal crisis you referenced in Osun, and of course, by extension, Kano. It is normal to have misunderstandings and disagreement in a family. In family unit, you do have that. Of course, you expect more of that in a political setting, with different backgrounds, interests, competing. So, in Osun, I reference to you the processes. Because we're a party of law and rules, there are procedures as long as we follow that procedure. And there are challenges from it. Of course, you reference the fact that some members have gone to court. But that does not preclude us from having our reconciliation process going on. And this is ongoing. I recall I said earlier that reconciliation is not a 100-meter dash. It's a marathon. And the processes that we have are well suited to take care of that. I recall earlier too that I mentioned the fact that in Kano State, as difficult as it might seem as of today, we had a long meeting with all the stakeholders in Kano yesterday. And that, again, that is continuing. So that is expected. But the challenge is not about whether you have crisis or have disagreement. It is whether you have the mechanism to attend to those processes. And whether you can resolve that using your internal mechanism, because you can work as an organic body, as a family. So that takes care of that. So the issue of 40 million. Again, Rufai, I'm going to tell you this. Politics is not cheap, and that's a fact, particularly at that level. And it's all over the world. Politics and running for office is challenging. It's expensive. But again, you recall that yesterday, people came together, for instance, in obtaining, because in the reporting that I saw on TV last night, a group of people came together, put their money together, and got the form for former Vice President and our last President candidate, Atiku Abubakar. So what it means, people now believe that it is a cooperation of people that comes in. So when you look at the global figure of 40 million, looks big, but if people who are interested in this process come together, it becomes people contributing, and that brings in inclusion and the fact that people now participate in the process. So if you look at the 40 million, you might be disconnected to how is this source and what people are interested in this. So for us, we know it is expensive to do politics and to run for political office. However, when there are people who are interested in sharing the burden to be involved in the process, it will become less in terms of effect on individual.
Well, except to point out that, look, the high cost of nomination and expression of interest forms, would exclude quite a significant number of people. But what is more important is accountability. What the party does with that money and who accounts for it and how it is accounted for at the end of the day. But I was going to ask you, the main thing that former Vice President Atiku Abubakar said was that if there was no level playing field within the party, that could mark the end of the People's Democratic Party. Is that a fear that the leadership of the party, is expressing by leaving it open? You are quoting Section 40 of the Constitution. But what the PDP is known for, which has been referenced by the APC, is that it was the PDP, in fact, that introduced zoning as a convention. And now all of a sudden, the same party is saying, oh, the Constitution is superior to the convention. Yes, on the surface of it. But in terms of practice, the party had always defended zoning.
Yes. Like I said to you, because as a party, when you have your constitution, you're going to be guided by that. And you must obey them in any event. However, in obeying the constitution and abiding by the tenets, of course, you consider so many factors. You will recall that in the national convention that we had, that brought in the new National Working Committee, there are 21 positions that are contested. Only 3 were contested. What does that mean? It meant that the party has a processes within its issue resolution. And they were able to do that and have a rancorous-free national convention. You will recall that arriving at that conclusion was based on the Bala Muhammad Committee. Again, that had to do with the Igwanyi, the governor of Enugu committee, both now being considered before we arrive at the zoning arrangement at that level. Now, consistent with that practice, the NEC, in its wisdom now, constituted a 37-member committee to look at the issue of zoning and then revert back to it, just like we did going into the National Convention. And then we're able to resolve our issues. So I believe that, again, this will be resolved. As to the fear of whether the party, whether we're concerned about the statement credited to Atiku Abubakar, our party has a mechanism to resolve the issues. You recall that 4 years ago in Port Harcourt, these issues came up. But our party survived it because we're able to have the mechanism that allows us to look into ourselves, look at the interest of the country in particular, and at this time, look at the unity of the country. So I think these are all consistent with what we do, and it's not against our constitution. All we are doing to review our processes, which is necessary for any party that wants to be dynamic and be responsive and responsible for the processes that are available right now, and particularly the current feelings and interests in the country. So it is important for you to put it in perspective that PDP is connected to the people. We're talking to ourselves. We have our processes that are almost seamlessly working towards reconciling all our people. And we believe that at the end of this, the PDP will come out stronger and Nigeria will be better for it.
Okay, thank you very much, Debo Ologunagba, for joining us on the morning show.